So James Jeans was a British physicist. I think he died about 1946. He was a physicist and philosopher, and he wrote a few books which were popular books about science. And he's well known for a quote along the lines of that the universe is more like a giant thought than a giant machine. I suspect his thought was more mathematical in nature, because for the physicist who studies physical reality, it's mathematics which is the reality which underpins physics. So physicists express reality in terms of mathematics. And what is mathematics? What is the reality of mathematics? Is mathematics material? We would certainly call it abstract. But is something abstract real? The science behind technology is abstract. If you study computing science, it's very abstract, and yet this gives us computers which are very practical. So we could say reality is abstract, and all those hard-headed material realists who feel they're in touch with reality are missing the point that reality is abstract. It's the nature of a giant thought. Our reality is what we think it is. So for the physicist, reality is mathematics. Reality is mathematical. Some people like to think of reality as solid. That's what they think, and that's what it is for them. Some people like to think of reality in terms of God. That becomes their reality. Whatever arises as real in the body of consciousness is experienced as real. This chapter, or this part of chapter 100, is about those that very much associate reality with being in a body, or with being a body. Everyone is made of that, whether there is a real physical body or not. So whether there is such a thing as a physical body, we're all familiar with the notion of the body, and we identify with that notion to a greater or lesser extent. So this is, in a sense, what we're made of. We're made of that notion, which, depending on our disposition, we give greater or lesser degree of reality to. If it is contended that sense experience alone is consciousness, then one is bound to suffer, for as long as one lives, there are bound to be contradictory experiences. For some people, reality is very much what comes through the senses. Even though, again, if you're a scientist, reality is very much about forces and energy which are beyond the senses. And there's often a conflict between what our senses tell us and what we feel and what we think. We might like to think that we're being down to earth and matter of fact, but what we're doing is going along with a certain set of assumptions, a certain set of value judgments, which we need to reconcile. This is learning, this is part of understanding. The world is always presenting challenges to us, to our understanding, and we have to respond to these challenges. We either have to adapt or fight to defend our assumptions, our beliefs. On the other hand, if one realizes that this world is but a notion that arises in consciousness, the division of the contradiction ceases, and therefore there is no contradictory experience either. Even as floating dust particles do not affect space, pleasure and pain do not touch one who is established in the realization of the one indivisible infinite consciousness. So if you've invested in these notions, this is where the pain comes from. But if you realize that it's all notions, and these notions arise within our own awareness, and we realize our identity with that awareness, if we become aware of our awareness, then we're removing ourselves from the pain which identification with notions brings. So this is our spiritual practice. We do not apprehend a body or a personality or even a jiva. We don't get caught up in notions of body, of personality and so on. All this is pure consciousness, and whatever notion arises in it is experienced as such. We realize the notional nature of everything that we consider reality. Whether it is real or unreal, it is that which experiences the existence of the body. So whether you believe that awareness, consciousness is real or unreal, it is that which is experiencing the existence of the body. You're conscious of the body. That's what gives the body its reality. You're aware of the body. That's what gives the body its reality. So it's consciousness, it's awareness, which imbues things with reality. Whether consciousness is regarded as real or unreal, the person is that alone. That's your reality. That's what you can be identifying with. What that consciousness considers real is surely real. This doctrine confirms the teaching of all scriptures. When this understanding is clouded, perverse doctrines arise. When that misunderstanding is removed, it yields the highest fruit. Freedom from anxiety. But even when it is not rightly understood, it does not cease to be. Because what has just been said, who can argue with that, whether you're a materialist or not? Even if you're a materialist, you'll say that you're aware. Otherwise you cannot say you're a materialist. You're aware that you're a materialist, therefore you're saying there's such a thing as awareness. How can there be no awareness? If it is said that even after self-knowledge, this right understanding can once again be clouded, then there is no hope of getting rid of sorrow. I often say that right understanding can again be clouded. Realization is something that you have to work for. Realization is something which has to be continuously refreshed. That's my reality. So I have to look at that and see to what extent I'm accepting the inevitability of sorrow. Can I move to the reality in which right understanding is no longer clouded? If consciousness is realized as real, it is resorted to by the wise. If it is considered unreal, then one becomes inert like a rock. Consciousness isn't properly appreciated. The materialist will acknowledge consciousness, although they have a problem defining what it is. But it's a very grudging acknowledgement. It's just like a little bit of varnish on top of the elaborate construction that evolution has given us. We've got this rather irritating thing called consciousness, which doesn't seem to be substantial. So there's an attempt almost to brush it under the carpet. This is an impoverishing mentality. And so we should do our best to compensate for that diminishing of consciousness, because that's what's happening. You can go on about how wonderful the natural world is, how wonderful evolution is. We can look at the mechanics of our existence and gasp in awe at the intricacy of it. But what surpasses all of that is the nature of consciousness. Consciousness which allows us to appreciate all of these things. So by considering consciousness unreal, you're striving for inertness. Those that want to brush consciousness aside or say that there's not even any such thing, they're striving towards inertness. It is when this infinite consciousness sleeps, as it were, that the experience of objects arises and this world comes into being. Thus he who considers this world and the sense experience alone as real is inert and asleep. I've missed the point completely.